What happens when a grounded aircraft genius decides to beat BMW using scooter parts, aircraft, math, and a door from a refrigerator? Ladies and gentlemen, and my friend Timmy, welcome back to Cool Ideas, the only channel where the cars are smaller than your mother-in-law's patience. Now, if you're sitting comfortably, hopefully in something larger than today's featured ride, let's buckle up, loosen our belts, and dive into the wonderfully weird world of the Heinkel Kabine. The car that proved you don't need a big engine to make a big impression, or a big target for neighborhood kids with slingshots. First, a big thank you to our sponsors, always the real heroes behind the scenes. Without your support, I'd probably be reviewing cars from Timmy's garden shed, which is only slightly less organized than his love life. Seriously, thank you for helping us bring these automotive oddities to the screen. And Timmy, for once, put down the fishing rod. We're talking microcars, not microfish. Now, let's spin the clock back to Germany, 1956. The world was still recovering from the war, the Beatles weren't even a thing yet, and Professor Ernst Heinkel, an aircraft designer of some renown, was banned from building planes and needed a new project. So Heinkel, inspired by the Italian Isetta at the 1954 Geneva show, decided, I can make it lighter, faster, and just as hard to find in a crowded parking lot. He rallied his best engineers, dusted off some aircraft blueprints, and got to work in the former Pfalz Aircraft Works in Speyer. But let's set the stage. 1950s Europe was desperate for affordable, efficient transport. The microcar boom was on. The Isetta was too heavy for Heinkel's taste, so he set out to one-up the Italians by applying aircraft principles to the cabine. Lightweight monocoque construction, a stubby tail, a single front hinge door, and a roof that doubled as an emergency exit. And just like my friend Bob and his homemade bunker, it was built for people who didn't trust the usual exits. Now here's a fun bit. Heinkel was so careful not to infringe on BMW's patents that he literally had to negotiate with Munich about design differences, especially the steering column. The cabines was fixed, unlike the swinging one in the Isetta, meaning that if you had long legs, you got in and out with all the grace of Timmy leaving a bar at 2 a.m. Heinkel wasn't looking for copycats, he was aiming for innovation, and probably a few more years of peaceful sleep. Production began in early 1956. The first cabin, the Type 150, rocked up with a three-wheeler layout and a 174 cubic centimeters single-cylinder four-stroke air-cooled gasoline engine, good for about 9.2 horsepower. That's right, folks. 9, just enough to make the neighborhood cats nervous. The engine was centrally located just behind the cabin, driving the single rear wheel via a 4-speed manual gearbox plus reverse. If you wanted more wheels, the Type 154 gave you 4 of them and a slightly bigger engine. 204 cubic centimeters briefly, before they dropped it to 198 for tax reasons. I believe accountants are the true enemy of horsepower. Suspension? Up front, it's independent. Transverse swing arm, coil springs, and hydraulic dampers. In the back, a single swing arm with a coil spring and shock absorber, which frankly looks like it was borrowed from a scooter that's seen better days. Now about the brakes. This is where it gets classic German. You've got hydraulic drum brakes working only on the front wheels. That's your foot brake, while the single rear wheel is stopped by a mechanical handbrake operated by cable. Yes, you heard that right. If you're rolling downhill backwards, it's all up to your right arm and a little faith. Only a Heinkel would make stopping an upper body workout. Tires were a dainty 4.40 by 10 inches on all wheels, so it really does look like it's wearing roller skates to a grown-up car party. The wheelbase, just 5 feet 9 inches, 1,060 millimeters. Overall length, 8 feet 4 inches, 550 width. 4 feet 6 inches, 1,370 millimeters. Height, 4 feet 4 inches, 1,320. Curb weight for the early German-built three-wheelers was just about 536 pounds, 243 kilograms. That's less than my neighbor Bob's annual supply of canned beans. Some later or better-equipped cabines crept up closer to 640 pounds. But what really set the cabine apart was the engineering. The all-steel monocoque body was 220 pounds lighter than the BMW Isetta, proving that sometimes less really is more. Instead of a body-on-frame like the competition, the cabine was a true featherweight, which meant it could get away with a tiny motor and still hit speeds of 53 to 56 miles per hour, 85 to 90 kilometers per hour. Fuel economy was an incredible 4 liters per 100 kilometers, around 60 miles per gallon. Inside, the cabine was a study in minimalism. 2 seats for adults, a fold-down backrest for luggage, and if you believe the brochures, space for 2 kids behind the seats. I think you'd have to fold the kids too. Entry was via a single front hinge door, and in case it jammed, you escaped through the fabric sunroof, a feature I liked the most, especially after being stuck inside a Fiat 500 with Timmy once. Never again, Timmy, never again. Of course, the cabine wasn't all rainbows and German engineering. Heinkel actually lost between 400 and 500 Deutschmarks on every car sold. Imagine explaining that to your accountant. Production was so expensive that despite the premium price tag of 2,750 Deutschmarks, about $650 in 1956, or $7,000 to $8,000 in today's money, it was still a losing venture. After Heinkel's death in 1958, and as aircraft production resumed, the company sold the whole cabine operation to the Dundalk Engineering Company in Ireland. Around 12,000 units were made in Germany, with another 6,500 built in Ireland between 1958 and 1961, after which the basic design lived on as the British Trojan 200. And you want fun facts? The cabine was actually entered in the Monte Carlo Rally in 1956 as a publicity stunt. It didn't win, but it did turn heads and possibly a few stomachs. It also starred in a handful of British comedies. So if you ever see one rolling across your screen, now you know why everyone looks so cramped. Let's get to the price. The only number that makes my heart race faster than this engine ever could. Back in the day, you'd fork over 2,750 Deutschmarks. But now, if you want a top-condition cabine, get ready to pay. At RM Sotheby's in 2013, a pristine 1956 Type 153 went for £34,900, about $48,000, and a 1957 three-wheeler fetched $35,650. Average auction prices for great examples today? Anywhere between $20,000 and $40,000. Now, I have to mention the real highlight. The cabine was not just a car, but an escape pod for the working class. Its sliding fabric sunroof doubled as an emergency exit, which I think is brilliant. Timmy wishes his last 3 relationships had that feature. The cabine came with a 4-speed manual gearbox and a true reverse gear, something that not all of its bubble car rivals could boast. Sure, most BMW Isettas did have reverse too, but in some countries and versions, it was blocked for licensing reasons, just to fit into the motorcycle or 3-wheeler category and avoid extra taxes. Trust me, having a working reverse comes in handy when you accidentally drive straight into your neighbor's chicken coop. Sorry, Bob. Before we close, let's give the cabine a little applause. Sure, it's not the fastest, the strongest, or the most practical, but it's unique. A survivor from a wild, optimistic era of engineering. It took aircraft know-how and shrank it to the size of a suitcase. It stands out in any microcar collection, has more personality than half the politicians, and unlike them, doesn't promise you the world and then take a 3-month vacation. So, thanks for joining us today. If you enjoyed this micro-sized adventure, smash that subscribe button. Share your weirdest car stories in the comments. See you next time on Cool Ideas, where we like our cars tiny. Our jokes big and our friends, well, a little bit weird.